This is the independent practice for 10.1. Hopefully you've had a chance to try some of these things. One thing I really recommend is what it says right here, show your work. Write the formula down, fill in the variables, and then solve. Okay? So I know right here it says volume of each prism. The volume, and this is a rectangular prism, the volume of a rectangular prism, volume equals length times width times height. Okay, so I wrote it down. Now I'm going to replace some things. I don't know the volume, so the V has to stay there. The length is right here. 10 times the width is right here. 4, and it says 2/5, but if I go 2 divided by 5, it's 0.4, and it's not a repeating one. It doesn't go on and on and on. So I'm going to use that. I like decimals instead of fractions. So 4 2/5 is the same as 4.4, and then I multiply it by my height, which is 3. Okay? So this times this gets me the area of my base. Once I get the area of the base, then I know I have to do that 3 times to get up to the top. Okay? So let's multiply those. 10 times 4.4 equals 44. So if I do these two first, volume equals 44 times 3. Then I do times 3, and that gets me volume equals 132. So my volume is 132, but I have to put the unit down. And this time it's not squared. That's just if it's a flat area and I'm getting the area of like a square or a rectangle or a triangle. But here I'm getting how many cubes can go into this shape, this three-dimensional shape. So it's 132 cubic meters, or meters cubed. Okay, so you always put a little 3 right there. All right, let's go on to number 2. If you don't have enough space to work on here, get an extra piece of paper, because it is essential. To get a correct answer, you're much, much more likely to get it if you write the formula and then fill in the variables. Okay, so I have a similar thing here. Volume equals length times width times height. I don't know my volume, but I do know my length is 10 times my width is 5 times my height is 12. Now if I go 12, and then I'm going to do 3 divided by 8, that gets me 0.375. So let's do 10. Volume equals 10 times 5 is 50 times 12.375. Okay, 50 times 12.375 gets me 618.75. So my answer is 618.75. My unit is yards, and because it's how many cubes will go in it, it's cubed. So it's 618.75 cubic yards. All right, let's do number 3. Again, the volume equals length times width times height. And I have a length of 6. Always write your formula out. I'm going to keep saying that until you actually do it every time. The width would be this part right here, and this part is the same as this part. Okay, so the width is 6, and the height is that. So the height is 4. I know that 3/4 is 0.75, so I'm just going to change that to a decimal. So let's do this first. Volume equals 6 times 6 is 36 times 4.75. I'm going to do that on my calculator, 4.75, and that gets me 171. So my answer is 171. My unit is inches, and because it's volume, it's cubed. All right, let's go on to 4. A fishing tackle box. Now, I don't see a picture, so I'm going to do a picture, because pictures help me. Helps me to know what I have. Okay, tackle box, 13 inches long. So 13 inches long, 6 inches wide. Oops, that's inches. And 2.5 inches high. So I have all the stuff. I come over here, I do volume equals length times width times height. Volume equals the length of 13, the width of 6, and the height of 2.5. I'm going to multiply 13 times 6 first. 13 times 6. 13 times 6 equals 78 times 2.5. All right, times 2.5 equals volume equals 195. So my volume equals 195. We're talking about inches, and because it's volume, it's cubed. Number 5. Find the length of a rectangular prism having a volume, a width, and a height. So I get okay, here's what I got to do. Let's go over here like this. I'm going to draw a little picture of this rectangular prism. All of my prisms kind of look alike. There we go. Okay. Now, I do know the volume. So the volume equals 2,830.5 meters cubed. Okay. Now, the width right here is 18.5, and the height right here is 9. Now, if I just could find the length, I'd be all set. That's what I'm missing. Okay, so I need to find the length. Volume equals length times width times height. Volume I know the volume. So I'm going to enter that as 2830.5 equals length I do not know, but I do know the width of 18.5, and I do know the height of 9. So let's multiply those together first. 18.5 times 9 equals 166.5 times length equals 2830.5. I want to get just the length. So if I can get that alone, I'll be good. Right now, it's times 166.5. I have to do the opposite to get rid of it. Divide it by 166.5, but I have to do that to each side. This becomes 1, so it's just the length, equals, so then I go 2830.5 divided by 166.5, and I get 17. So my length, length equals 17, and we're talking about meters, so 17 meters. It's not squared or cubed, it's just one of the length. All right. Number 6. Find the missing dimension of each prism. Okay, just like what we did. Okay. First of all, I write my formula. Don't you love me saying that? I'm going to keep saying it. Formula, formula, formula. Write it down. Then fill in the blanks. V equals, so V is equals 60. My length, I don't know. My width, 2.5. And my height is 4. Okay, so I'm going to do 2.5 times 4. And that gets me 10. Equals 60. I want to get this length all by myself, all by itself. So instead of times 10, I'm going to divide each side by 10. Divide each side by 10, that gets 6 equals length. So the length right here equals 6 inches. Okay. When you just write the formula, fill in the missing stuff, and then solve for whatever is left, you're going to be fine. We have another one just like that. Volume equals length times width times height. I know the volume. It's 109 point. I'm going to try and change 1/5 to a decimal. 1 divided by 5 is 0.2. Not repeating, that's good. All right, 109 is the volume. The length is 7 times the width, don't know, times the height is 5. And I'm going to convert that again to 0.2. Okay? So now I'm going to multiply this with this first. 109.2 equals 7 times 5.2 equals 36.4 W. Now, I want to get this W all by itself, so I have to divide each side by 36.4 divided by 36.4. This will just get me width, which is what I'm looking for, but I have to do the 109.2 divided by 36.4, and it gets me 3. So my width is 3 millimeters, not squared, not cubed. All right, let's go to number 8. In Japan, farmers have created watermelons in the shape of rectangular prisms. How cool. Find the volume of a prism-shaped watermelon in cubic inches if the length is that, the width is that, and the height is that. Okay, so we have our watermelon, which is a really strange shape for a watermelon. That's okay. Length is 10, width is 2/3. Oh, wait a minute. 2/3 of a foot. We have inches. Let's get 2/3 of a foot into inches. And the way we do that is we have to do 2/3 times 1 foot, which is 12 inches. Okay? And we'll put that over there. So it's 24 over 3. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So 2/3 of a foot. 2/3 of a foot is 8 inches. Okay, so I'm going to convert this to 8 inches. You got to be real careful and watch how they do that. Okay, so get rid of that. And 2/3 of a foot is the same as 8 inches, and a height of 9 inches. So now I have volume equals length times width times height. Volume equals a length of 10, a width of 8, and a height of 9, and they're all in inches. Now that they're all in inches, it's real easy. So 10 times 8 is 80 times 9. Volume equals 720. 720, and we're talking about inches, and it's cubed because it's the volume. Okay? Let's see here. Number 9. The glass container shown is filled to a height of 2.25 inches. Okay, so it looks like the height is from here to here is 3, but from where it's filled to here is 2.25. Okay, let's see if that matters. How much sand is currently in the container? So we're not saying how much can fit in the container, it's how much is there. So we're not going to use this 3, we're going to use that for the height. Okay, so let's go over here. Volume equals length times width times height. Volume equals a length of 5 times a width of 4. I'm going to do 0.5 times the height of 2.25. Volume equals 5 times 4.5 times 2.25 equals 50.625. 50.625. We're talking about inches, and it's cubed. So that's how much sand is currently in the container. How much more sand could the container hold before it overflows? So now we're talking about this little area here. What is left? Well, I'm going to take 3 minus 2.25, and it's going to get me 0.75. So what I want is from here, this little area right here. I want to know how much sand can go in that little area. Has the same length of 5, the same width of 4.5, but now the height is just this 0.75. Okay, so let's do that. Volume equals length times width times height. Volume equals a length of 5 times a width of 4.5 times a height of 0.75. Now, let's do that. 5 times 4.5 times 0.75 equals 16.875. Volume equals 16.875, and that is inches, and it's cubed because it's how much more I could hold. Now, if I would add this number to this number, those two numbers would get me how much the whole thing could hold. Okay, that's what it is holding. This is what more it could. So is more. Okay, now, what percentage of the container is filled with sand? Okay, now, you got to think of percentage and how you're going to solve that. All right, the way you're going to find the percentage of how much sand is in the container is you're going to go like this. This is something we did a while ago. Hopefully you'll still kind of remember. I'm going to move this over a little bit like this. So I want to know how much could go in the whole container. So the whole container could be 50.625 plus 16.875. And if I add those up, that's a 0, 7, 2 is 9, another 10, 14, 15, drop my decimal, that's 7, that's 6. 67.5. So that's how much the total will hold. I want to know what percentage is filled. So I'm going to take how much is in there, 50.625, and I'm going to divide that by the total. And when I do that, it'll get me a decimal, and then I'll convert that decimal to a percentage. Okay, so if I go 50.625 divided by the total volume, 0.5, it gets me 0.75. And I can take a decimal, 0.75, to a percent by going 1, 2, and then it's a percent. So 75% is filled. Now I want to see if that makes sense. If I have about 50 of it filled and the total is about 67, 50 and 67. Now 75% is a good chunk of it. Is 50 it's more than half. It's not quite the whole thing. So I would say 50 is about 75% of 67. So just to check, I always like to say, does it make sense? And this one does. Okay, might be off by a little, but at least it makes sense. All right, so the last one with the percentage was kind of difficult, but hopefully the other ones on this sheet make sense to you. Go ahead and ask me questions if you have any questions, but go ahead and let's do the extra practice and see how you do trying some of these on your own.